you assert, and I understand why you do that, Adam was an historical individual. He reappears in the New Testament, of course. He's mentioned on the lips of Jesus in the Gospels, mentioned by Paul, and so on. So, we are constrained to accept his historicity if we are to take this scripture with great seriousness. But the question is, when did he live? And this kind of goes into the whole issue of contemporary scientific accounts of human evolution. So we're looking at when did he live, and we're going now into archaeology, we're going into genetics, or whatever it is you propose we use as a way of determining the age of the human race that we as contemporary people are physically descended from. We're sons of Adam, literally, I think. So could you just explain how you connect this up with when he lived and the contemporary scientific accounts of human evolution?
Yes. The question of when humanity originated on this planet is a scientific question, not a biblical question. And I think we can first set up some very broad parameters. I think that when you get to the beautiful cave paintings, for example, in France at Chauvet and Lascaux, these are clearly the products of human artists. They are beautiful, breathtaking images, so that at least by this time, humanity is already there. Yeah. On the other hand, if you push far back into the past, I think when you get to Homo erectus, 1 million years or so ago, then you're dealing with hominins who have a brain case that is too small to support modern human consciousness. So that sometime in this window between Homo erectus and these beautiful cave paintings, humanity originated. Now, what I try to do in the book is to close that window more tightly to determine the time at which Adam and Eve existed. And what I point out is that we are looking for people like us in the past. When did people like us first make their appearance? And that will involve not simply anatomical similarity to us, but more importantly, cognitive behaviors that we exhibit. And the anthropologists Sally McBrady and Alison Brooks list 4 of these modern cognitive behaviors, including things like planning depth, abstract thinking, technological innovation, and symbolic thinking. Now, obviously, those are intangible. We can't detect them directly. I was going to say,
that sound wonderful criteria, but how on earth do you connect that with the archaeological?
Yes. What McBrady and Brooks say is that we have to look for what they call archaeological signatures of these modern cognitive behaviors. And so they list around 24 of these archaeological signatures that give evidence for symbolic thinking or technological innovativeness or planning for the future. And it is stunning how deep into the past these archaeological signatures go. Really? On the basis of these, I argue that humanity did not originate with Homo sapiens, that in fact Neanderthals and their descendants, Denisovans, were equally human with Homo sapiens, that they also exhibited these modern cognitive behaviors. And therefore, the origin of humanity must go back even further to at least the last common ancestor of Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. And this is the so-called Homo heidelbergensis, or Heidelberg man, who had a brain capacity.
There was some guy called Heidelberg who was he a German guy who discovered this, was he? I don't know.
Well, it's named after the city of Heidelberg, where the jaw of this hominin was first found. And then, since then, it's been found in various places around the world. And so this suggests that humanity originated somewhere around 750,000 years ago. We don't know exactly where, perhaps in the Middle East, perhaps in Africa. But then from then it spread into Africa, where it evolved into Homo sapiens, and into Europe, where it evolved into Neanderthals and Denisovans. So that we all are part of this common human family.
Yeah, so this is very interesting. You said something, so I haven't read the book. I confess I have ordered it, by the way, so it's arriving tomorrow after the interview, not before, but hey, that's the way it is. I'm fascinated by what you just said there. I wasn't expecting you to say this. You said that it looks as if humanity had their origin in the Middle East, not in Africa, because the prevailing popular perception, it may not be based on the latest research, of course, is that we all came out of Africa. But you're saying the Middle East and then went into Africa. I was very surprised to hear that.
Yeah, that is an option. The famous out of Africa migration is talking about the migration of Homo sapiens out of Africa into Europe and the Middle East. But that's far too late. I've already pushed the origin of humanity back to the last common ancestor of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. And that could have been in the Middle East. It could have been elsewhere. And then these Homo heidelbergensis migrated to these other areas where, geographically isolated from one another, they evolved into these different human species.
Right. Now, my kind of next question is going to bring in the Quran here as a Muslim, but I'll just mention this. But in the Quran, it talks about Adam being a special creation of God. Okay. And this is like non-negotiable, really, for many people I've spoken to. You can believe in evolution. You can believe in macroevolution of other species. But the red line, the line in the sand is Adam is a special creation of God because he is spoken of in those terms. Interestingly, in the Genesis account, we have a similar kind of story where Adam is also a special creation. But what do I mean by that? I mean a supernatural, miraculous creation by God ex nihilo. Perhaps on the analogy, and the Quran itself gives this analogy of Jesus being born of a virgin. His conception is wholly without male input, shall we say.
Right. Yes.
It's a miraculous thing. So scientifically, of course, that can't be accounted for, but that's okay because it's a miracle. In the same way, the creation of Adam is also analogously, and the analogy is drawn in the Quran with Adam. So my question really to you is, where do you fit into, do you identify with this spectrum of views? Do you posit an Adam who was supernaturally created by God, as it says in Genesis, or do you have a different understanding of the trajectory of the evolution of hominid forms that became something else?
My book leaves this an open question. The question that I'm interested in is, when did humanity originate on this planet, not how? So in the book, I assume, for the sake of argument, the standard evolutionary account and try to show how the existence of a historical Adam and Eve as a founding pair of the human race is consistent with what we know from modern paleoanthropology and evolutionary theory. But if someone wants to say, well, these original members of Homo heidelbergensis were created out of the dust of the earth miraculously by God, he's certainly open to believe that. My theory doesn't take a position on that.
Okay, that's fair. You're agnostic on that. That's fine. It just seems to me that the biblical scriptures require that, or at least state that in pretty ambiguous terms.
I would say, Paul, that that's only true if you read these narratives in a literalistic way. But if I'm right that this is mytho-history and not to be read literally, I think it's quite consistent with the creation story in Genesis 2, where God forms Adam out of the dust of the earth and breathes into his nostrils the breath of life. That this is a figurative image for God taking a pre-human hominin and elevating it to the status of full humanity by infusing a rational soul into this form.
Right. So if there was an account of the supernatural dimension in what you've just said, it would be as you put it, the infusion of a supernatural soul into
Yes. And there may have been a biological There might have been a biological miracle involved as well, maybe a systemic genetic mutation that would enable this hominin to support the capacities of a rational soul. But yes, as a dualist who thinks that we're more than just bags of chemicals on bones, that we have souls, that would definitely be a supernatural element, the infusion of a rational soul.
Right. So you're a Christian, obviously you're a dualist. I'm an idealist, philosophically speaking. So it's very similar to that. There has to be some top-down input, if you like, as well as a bottom-up input in terms of the end product, if I can use that crude language. You'd accept that, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Well, I think that I've come to the end of my questions, and you've been very generous in hearing my questions and my pushback on one or two points. It's very kind of you.